the English? Or you want Oriya?
पिला माने जो मोड रे तमे कहबो हमें सेही मोड रे जीवा जदी पूरा इंग्लिश ताले पूरा इंग्लिश जदी पूरा ओडिया ताले पूरा ओडिया
ma'am is comfortable with both the language. So anyway, so today straight away it's a bit late because of the technical issues. So it's a nice gesture. I mean, due to this pandemic, so everybody is joined. Please kindly put in the mute mode. All the learners should put in the mute mode. So there should be not any disturbance will come. So I welcome to ma'am to today's class. This is the second class. So I mean it is the MSOE-1 Socialism of Education. So might be today ma'am will discuss the different thinkers. Yesterday is discussed the one thinker. So I think today also she will continue this. So dear learners, I mean what I am telling you, whatever the issues, what are the problem, you can ask us. Ma'am, once ma'am will finish its presentation. So now I'm requesting ma'am, you straight away can start your presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Students, if I am audible, समस्त मते कुहो जे which modality will be comfortable for you. जदि तमे कहिबो जे आमे ओडिया रे पूरा करबा ताले ओडिया रे कथा है कि ना म तुमको कहि परिबे जदि पूरा इंग्लिश ताले पूरा इंग्लिश तो काली आमे फॉलो करथिले आ जदि मिक्स तमे कहिबो ताले मिक्स्ड वे रे मध्ये आमे डिस्कशन करि परिबा कोटा तुमको कंफर्टेबल निज माइक्रोफोन अनम्यूट करके ना मते कुहो अनम्यूट योरसेल्फ हाँ संग्राम कौन कंफर्टेबल होची कहो
You can use both the languages whenever you want. I am very much comfortable in both the languages.
Okay, you are comfortable in both the languages. Our Sanjeevan Mandal, you unmute yourself. You were saying something. Sanjeevan Mandal, कौन करिबा कहो? Unmute करो. निज माइक्रोफोन को unmute करो. ताले सुबिबो. Otherwise हमको सुबुनी. हाँ. Unmute है करूनी तमो माइक्रोफोन. Okay. So we are getting in the chat box most of the responses. जे मैडम हमें दीटा जगह लैंग्वेज यूज कर परिबा. We will be
ma'am you can use both the languages.
Okay.
Mix up the language you can speak. Okay.
Okay, so we'll use both of the languages. And if yesterday whatever we were discussing, from that someone is having some doubts which you want me to discuss, जदि काली के किछि जिंस बुझिबा ପାଇଁ चाहूचो ताले तमे मते क्विकली कहिबो एंड देन आमे आगु को बढ़िबा. तार किछि सेमते डाउट अछि कि काली रो सेशन रे आमे जा डिस्कस करथुले संग्राम
जी मैम
सेमते किछि डाउट अछि कारो काली रो सेशन रो जोटा हमर डिस्कस करबा दरकार ना आमे आगेबा.
1 minute.
चैट बॉक्स रे भी लिखि परिबो जदि काली रो सेशन रो किछि डाउट है.
हमर होगा तो भूली जाइथो तो
So I think we can go ahead now. So yesterday हमें last कौन discuss करथुले. I think we were discussing about the case studies. संग्राम मते कहलो last कौन discuss करथुले हमें.
Ma'am, last class we have discussed about mainly about the education and the literacy. And education, how through education students can be taught, and that is educative reasoning about and the most about to education.
About education. Okay. So we were covering the interactionist perspective of education. तामने तमे क्लासरूम भितर जो फेस टू फेस इंटरेक्शन करूचो आ जो भलिया तमे सपोज कथा बार्ता कला बळको कोन फेशियल एक्सप्रेशन दोचो से सब जिंस को नै किना हमें इंटरेक्शनिस्ट पर्सपेक्टिव ऑफ एजुकेशन को बुझुथि. Okay, so now we will go to the next perspective of education, that is postmodernism. Okay, तो postmodernism कहले अगर हम कौन बुझुछु जानिबा दरकार. आमे जेतबे मॉडर्निज्म बोली कहूछु, मॉडर्निज्म माने होची जे जेकोसी गोटे जिंस को गोटे सिंगुलर पर्सपेक्टिव किंबा गोटे सिंगल पर्सपेक्टिव रे देखिबा को आमे मॉडर्निज्म बोली कहू. आ पोस्टमॉडर्निज्म माने होची मल्टीपल डायमेंशन और मल्टीपल जिंस को जेतबे आमे देखू सेटा को आमे पोस्टमॉडर्निज्म बोली कहू. ये जो पोस्ट मॉडर्निज्म पर्सपेक्टिव तार रिलेवेंस कोन रही एजुकेशन रे सेटा जतबे हमें बुझिबा पई चाहू जे हमें गोटे पर्टिकुलर थिंकर को रेफर करजे जहा ना होची इवान इलिच. ओके, सो इवान इलिच इज वेरी फेमस इन द पोस्ट मॉडर्निस्टिक पर्सपेक्टिव टू अंडरस्टैंड एजुकेशन इन सोसाइटी. देखो हमें पोस्ट मॉडर्निज्म माने गोटे मल्टीपल पर्सपेक्टिव किंबा गोटे प्लूरल पर्सपेक्टिव को बुझुचे ताले एटी गोटे बेसिक क्वेश्चन आसुची जे केमिति का हमें पोस्ट मॉडर्निज्म पर्सपेक्टिव को हमर एजुकेशन को बुझिबा पई इंप्लीमेंट करि पारिबा. कोन एमिति थ्योरी देथिबे इवान इलिच जहा द्वारा कि हमें पोस्ट मॉडर्निस्ट प्लूरलिस्टिक अप्रोच को इम्प्लाई करिकिना एजुकेशन इन सोसाइटी ऊपर टिके आइडिया पाई परिबा. ओके, so before we go to understand that perspective we have to understand what is a meaning of postmodern society. एमदी सम्मान सब जानि थिबो जतबेले हमें मॉडर्न कहूचे ताको हमें बुझुचे मॉडर्निस्टिक सोसाइटी. मॉडर्न रो परवर्ती समय जो जिंसटा आसीची सेटा होची पोस्ट मॉडर्निस्टिक सोसाइटी. ताले पोस्ट मॉडर्न सोसाइटी इज डोमिनेटेड बाय द मार्केट ओरिएंटेड वर्ल्ड ऑफ कंजम्पशन विथ डिसेंट्रलाइज्ड प्रोडक्शन सिस्टम. ता माने पोस्ट मॉडर्न सोसाइटी रे कोनसी गोटे सेंट्रलाइज्ड एरिया ऑफ प्रोडक्शन रहिबो नाही, गोटे डिसेंट्रलाइज्ड मैनर रे प्रोडक्शन हबो. ता माने हमें कहि परिबानी जे केवल धनी माने ही प्रोडक्शन करिवे, गरीब माने प्रोडक्शन करिवेनी. जदि गोटे गरीब लोक पाखरे मध्य से भलिया साधन सब रहिची आ किछि किछि पर्सपेक्टिव ऑफ प्रोडक्शन रो स्किल्स रहिची ताहले गोटे तळ वर्गर लोक मध्य प्रोडक्शन सिस्टम रे जोगाजोग करि पारिबो. Society itself is a fragmented and pluralistic community of heterogeneous groups with diverse cultures and lifestyles in the society. ता माने कोन पोस्ट मॉडर्न सोसाइटी रे हमें देखु जे गोटे प्रकार प्लूरलिस्टिक अप्रोच रहुची, फ्रैगमेंटेशन रहुची. सिंगुलर माने कोन गोटे सिंगुलर जोटा कि हमें मॉडर्न कहूचे, प्लूरलिस्टिक माने होची मल्टीपल. तो मल्टीपल ओरिएंटेशन रहुची, हेटेरोजेनियस ग्रुप रहुची आ डाइवर्स कल्चर और लाइफस्टाइल को हमें पोस्ट मॉडर्निज्म द्वारा बुझी पाछे. Illich Concole, Ivan Illich, who questions on the notion of compulsory education and says that due to structured curriculum, the traditional skills are getting affected. Okay, ताले कोन हला इवान इलिच जेतबेले आसीले से जने पोस्ट मॉडर्न थिंकर थिले ये कहिले जे हमर जो कंपल्सरी एजुकेशन का जो प्रोसेस रे होउची सेटा होउची गोटे सिंगुलर मेथड रे होउची. सेटा एई भलिया होबा कथा नुहे. जदि आमे केवल स्कूल को जाइकिना पाठ पढुचे आ स्कूल रो करिकुलर को आमे कवर करूचे ताहाले आमे हमर ट्रेडिशनल स्किल्स को दूरे जाउचे. तमन को गोटे एग्जांपल मु देबी कोन हेई परिबो. सपोज जेमति आगुरु हमर ट्रेडिशनल मेथड ऑफ फार्मिंग विभिन्न प्रकार थिला. एग्रीकल्चरल सोसाइटी थिला जोतरे कि समस्त जाउतले जमी को सेठी केमिति तमर मंजी बुणा हबो देखुतले ताको केमिति का पानी दिया होतला देखुतले सब जिंस करिकले गोटे प्रकार एग्रीकल्चरल प्रोडक्शन रो सब नॉलेज मध्ये ताको मिलुतला. କିନ୍ତୁ ଧୀରେ ଧୀରେ ଏଜୁକେସନ ସିଷ୍ଟମ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଇଣ୍ଟ୍ରୋଡ୍ୟୁସ ହେଲା ପିଲାମାନେ କଣ କଲେ ଚାଷୀ ମାନଙ୍କର ପୁଅ ମାନେ ହେଲେ କି ଝିଅ ମାନେ ହେଲେ ସେମାନେ ସବୁ ବେଗ ଧରିକିନା ସେମାନେ ସ୍କୁଲ ଗଲେ ସେମାନେ ଆଉ ସେଇଠୁ ଘରୁ କୌଣସି ପ୍ରକାରର ଏଗ୍ରିକଲଚରାଲ ପ୍ରଡକ୍ସନ ଜିନିଷ ଉପରେ ଶିଖିବା ପାଇଁ ଫିଲ୍ଡ ଗଲେନି ସେମାନେ ସ୍କୁଲକୁ ଗଲେ ଆଚ୍ଛା ସ୍କୁଲକୁ ଯିବା ଫଳରେ ସେଇଠି ସେମାନେ କରିକୁଲମ ଅନୁସାରେ ପାଠ ପଢିଲେ ଧର ଓଡିଆର ଗଦ୍ୟ ପଢିଲେ ପଦ୍ୟ ପଢିଲେ ସେମାନେ ସେଇ ଅନୁସାରେ ନିଜକୁ ବିଲ୍ଡଅପ୍ କଲେ କିନ୍ତୁ ନିଜେ ଗୋଟେ ଚାଷୀ ପରିବାରରୁ ହେଇଥିବା ସମୟରେ ଚାଷ ଜମି କରିବା ପାଇଁ ଯୋଉ ସବୁ ଟ୍ରାଡିସନାଲ ସ୍କିଲ୍ କିମ୍ବା ନଲେଜ ଥିଲା ସେ ସବୁ ଜିନିଷ ତାଙ୍କ ପାଖରେ ଆଉ ରହିପାରିଲାନି ଫଳରେ ଦିଲିପଙ୍କର କହିବା କଥା ହଉଛି ଯେ ଆମେ ଯୋଉ କମ୍ପଲସରି ଏଜୁକେସନ ଫଲୋ କରୁଛେ ସେଇଟା ହଉଛି ସମ୍ପୂର୍ଣ୍ଣ ଭାବରେ ଗୋଟେ ପ୍ରକାର ଏକ ମୁହାଁ ପ୍ରକାରର ଏଜୁକେସନ ହେଇଯାଉଛି ଯୋଉଥିରେ କି ଆମର ଏକ୍ସପୋଜର ରହୁନି ଆଉ ଯୋଉଥିରେ କି ଆମର ଟ୍ରାଡିସନାଲ ସ୍କିଲ୍ସ ଆଉ ନଲେଜକୁ ଶିଖିବା ପାଇଁ କୌଣସି ଉପାୟ ରହୁନାହିଁ ସେଥିପାଇଁ ସେ କହିଲେ ଯେ ଇଟ୍ ଇଜ ହାଇ ଟାଇମ୍ ଟୁ ଡି ସ୍କୁଲ ଯେମିତି ଆମେ କହୁଛେ ସ୍କୁଲ ଯିବ ଯେମିତି ତମେ ଶୁଣୁଥିବ କ୍ୟାମ୍ପେନ୍ ଥିଲା ଗଭର୍ଣ୍ଣମେଣ୍ଟଙ୍କର ସ୍କୁଲ ଚଲେ ହମ୍ ସେମିତି ସ୍କୁଲ ଯାଇକିନା କଣ ତମେ ସବୁ ପ୍ରକାରର ଜିନିଷ ଶିଖୁଛ ଯୋଉଟା କରିକୁଲମରେ ଅଛି କୋର୍ସେସ୍ ଅଫ ଷ୍ଟଡି ଯେମିତି ଧର ତମକୁ ଏବେ ସୋସିଓଲୋଜି ଅଫ ଏଜୁକେସନ ରେ ଆମେ ଡିସ୍କସନ କରୁଛେ ତମେ ମଧ୍ୟ ଗୋଟେ କୋର୍ସେସ୍ ଅଫ ଷ୍ଟଡି ଫଲୋ କରୁଛ ମୁଁ ମଧ୍ୟ ସେଇ କୋର୍ସେସ୍ ଅଫ ଷ୍ଟଡିଜ୍ କୁ ଫଲୋ କରୁଛି ଆମେ ଗୋଟେ କରିକୁଲମରେ ଯାଉଛେ ତାମାନେ କଣ ବେସିକ ଜିନିଷ ଆମେ ଶିଖୁଛେ କିନ୍ତୁ ଏଜୁକେସନ ତ କେବଳ ଏତିକିରେ ଲିମିଟେଡ ନୁହେଁ ଯୋଉମାନେ ବିଏଡ୍ କରୁଛନ୍ତି ଯୋଉମାନେ ଏମଏଡ୍ କରୁଛନ୍ତି ଏଜୁକେସନରେ ପିଏଚଡି କରୁଛନ୍ତି ଏଇଭଳିଆ ଆହୁରି କେତେ କେତେ ଅଧିକ ଜିନିଷ ସେମାନଙ୍କର ଏଜୁକେସନର କରିକୁଲମରେ ଇନକ୍ଲୁଡେଡ ହଉଛି କିନ୍ତୁ ସେଇ ସବୁ ଜିନିଷ ଗୁଡାକୁ ଆମେ ଦେଖୁନାହୁଁ ଯେମିତି ଧର ମୁଁ ତମକୁ କହିବି ଏବେ ତମମାନଙ୍କୁ ମୁଁ ନେଇକିନା ଗୋଟେ ସ୍କୁଲ ଯାଇଥାନ୍ତି ସେଇଠି ତମକୁ ଡେମନଷ୍ଟ୍ରେଟ କରିବା ପାଇଁ ଯେ କେମିତି ଏଜୁକେସନର ମୋଡାଲିଟିସ୍ ଚାଲୁଛି ଆଉ କ୍ଲାସ ରୁମରେ ଟିଚର୍ସ ମାନେ କେମିତି ପଢଉଛନ୍ତି ସେଇଟା ଡେଫିନେଟଲି ବିଏଡ୍ କରୁଥିବା ପିଲାମାନଙ୍କର ପ୍ରାକ୍ଟିକାଲ କ୍ଲାସ ରୁମର ଜିନିଷ ସବୁ ରହୁଛି ତମମାନଙ୍କର ବି ପ୍ରାକ୍ଟିୟମ ଥିବ ନୋ ଡାଉଟ ବଟ୍ ଇନ୍ ଏ ୱେ ଆମର ଗୋଟେ ପ୍ରକାର ଇନଷ୍ଟ୍ରକ୍ସନ ମୋଡାଲିଟିଟା ଗୋଟେ ସିଙ୍ଗୁଲାର ମେଥଡରେ ହେଇଯାଉଛି କରିକୁଲମରେ ଯୋଉଟା ଅଛି ସେଇ ଜିନିଷଟାକୁ ଆମେ ଫଲୋ କରୁଛୁ ଆଉ ଟ୍ରାଡିସନାଲ ମେଥଡରେ ଯୋଉ ଯୋଉ ସବୁ ଜିନିଷ ରହୁଥିଲା ସେଇ ଜିନିଷ ଗୁଡାକ ଆମର ହେଇପାରୁନାହିଁ ଓକେ ସୋ ହି ହାଜ ଗିଭେନ ଦ କନସେପ୍ଟ ଅଫ ଡିସ୍କୁଲିଂ ତାମାନେ Illich is asking people not to go to schools and he is saying that you should be in a position to learn several kinds of skills from your own traditional society. କେମିତି ତମେ ଫଳ କରିବ କେମିତି ତମେ ପ୍ରଡକ୍ସନରେ ନିଜର ଯୋଗାଯୋଗ ଦବ ଯଦି ୱିଭିଂ କମ୍ୟୁନିଟିର ତମେ କେମିତି ଟେକ୍ସଟାଇଲରେ ଯୋଗାଯୋଗ ଦବ ଏସବୁ ଜିନିଷ ଉପରେ ଯେତେବେଳେ ତମର ନଲେଜ ହବ that will be more fruitful. So, Illich is trying to encourage a traditional kind of learning system in which there should be plural way. Singular method रे केवल curriculum रहिबा कथा नुहे plural methods रे जिनस गुड़ाक हवा कथा okay so then after completing this we are moving to the next thinker on education that is Rabindranath Tagore तमन सब टैगोर ना शुणिथिबो रविंद्रनाथ टैगोर रविंद्र संगीत होगा ह्यूमानिज्म और एजुकेशन होगा रविंद्रनाथ टैगोर एजुकेशन को बहुत एम्फासिस करथिले आ से कहथिले जे वेस्टर्न एजुकेशन गोटे एमिति जिंस सेटा भारतीय संस्कृति को संपूर्ण भाव में नष्ट कर दउची से वेस्टर्न एजुकेशन रो एगेंस्ट थिले अपोज टू द वेस्टर्न एजुकेशन एंड एनकरेज ट्रेडिशनल एजुकेशन जेमति तमे आगो थिंकर पर देखिलो इलिच कर द ही वाज आल्सो सेइंग दैट वी मस्ट गो टू द ट्रेडिशनल एजुकेशन एंड वी मस्ट लर्न स्किल्स फ्रॉम ट्रेडिशनल सोसाइटी जेमति रविंद्रनाथ टैगोर इज आल्सो सेइंग अबाउट एनकरेजमेंट ऑफ ट्रेडिशनल एजुकेशन नेक्स्ट से एम्फासिस करथिले मोरल एंड स्पिरिचुअल वैल्यू सिस्टम ऊपर कहीं मोरल और स्पिरिचुअल वैल्यू सिस्टम ऊपर एम्फासिस करथिले as all of you know that Indian society is very much rooted in terms of spirituality and mythology केमती तमन सब देखुछ एबे लॉकडाउन जेतबेले हला हमर सब रामायण महाभारत विष्णु पुराण एमती सब विभिन्न प्रकार माइथोलॉजिकल स्टोरीज सब हमको देखागला had it been a country like Canada or had it been a country like America तांकर लॉकडाउन रे तमे एमती माइथोलॉजिकल जिंस सब देखिबा को पाइबो नाही. Since India is a society where moral and spiritual values are emphasized very much, therefore we are seeing that such kind of alternates to spend time during the lockdown was provided. ताले कौन प्रोवाइड बुझुछ मोरल और स्पिरिचुअल वैल्यू सिस्टम ऊपर रविंद्रनाथ टैगोर एम्फासिस करथिले. ताकि से कौन करिले ना एजुकेशन इज मेनली ए काइंड ऑफ फ्रीडम from ignorance and passion and prejudice. ଯେମିତି ତମେ ଦେଖିବ ଅନେକ ଜଣ ତମମାନଙ୍କ ଭିତରୁ କିଛି କିଛି ସୁପରଷ୍ଟିସିୟସ୍ ଆଇଡିଆସ୍ କୁ ନେଇକିନା ବଞ୍ଚୁଥିବ. ଅନେକ ଜଣ ତମମାନଙ୍କ ଭିତରୁ ଭାବିଥିବ ଯେ ଏକ୍ସ ଟା ଏକ୍ସ ନୁହେଁ, ୱାଇ ଟା ୱାଇ ନୁହେଁ. କିନ୍ତୁ ତମର କରିକୁଲମ୍ ହେଇଗଲା କିମ୍ବା ଏଜୁକେସନ ଲର୍ଣ୍ଣିଂ ରେ କିଛି ଗୋଟେ ଜିନିଷ ତମେ ପଢିବା ବେଳକୁ ତମେ ଜାଣିବ ଆଚ୍ଛା ତାମାନେ ମୁଁ ଯୋଉଟା ଜାଣିଥିଲି ସେଇଟା ମୋର ଗୋଟେ ଭ୍ରମ ଧାରଣା ଥିଲା, ସେଇଟା ମୋର ସତ କନସେପସନ ନଥିଲା. एजुकेशन द्वारा पढ़िबा द्वारा एमती अनेक अनेक इग्नोरेंट जिंस गुड़ाक सब तमें क्रॉस कर पारिबो. जेमती मु कहबी आम घरे जेतेबेले समस्त न्यूज पेपर पढ़ती एमती गुड़ाए जिंस विषय कहती जे ए जिनसटा कले तुम देह स्वास्थ्य भल रहिबो, एई भलिया जिंस किछि गुटे देखिले तुमको अलग प्रकार सुविधा मिलिबो. सो ऑल दीज आर पार्ट ऑफ इन्फॉर्मेशन. जिते तुम एजुकेशन नब, जिते तुम पढ़, जिते तुम जान जिनस गुड़ाक तुम इग्नोरेंस रु बाहर. ओके देन टैगोर गोटे फेमस कंट्रीब्यूशन टू द फील्ड ऑफ एजुकेशन होची शांति निकेतन. बोलपुर रे शांति निकेतन अच्छी. गोटे सेमिनार जाइली बोलपुर शांति निकेतन को. तमें समस्त आश्चर्य हम देखिले जब समान भितर भी केजन जाइर आइडिया थी. इट इज अ वेरी यूनिक प्लेस. यूनिक प्लेस केमितिका सपोज तुमको ये लेक्चर रे मु जहाँ जहाँ जिनस कहूची से शांति निकेतन होता से सब लेक्चर ये जिनसा कहता डेफिनेटली तार 4टा से 5टा क्लास रे सब प्रकार प्रैक्टिकल जिनस करने तुमको निया आउ से सब प्रैक्टिकल जिनसर फैसिलिटी गुड़ाक से शांति निकेतन बाउंड्रीज भीतर ही अवेलेबल कराई. जैसे मैं तुमको एग्जांपल देवी आर्ट एंड आर्किटेक्चर डिपार्टमेंट कि सुंदर भाव में म्यूजियम स्टूडेंट्स मैंने आसुँच आर्ट एंड आर्किटेक्चर को निजे क्ले मटी बसिकिना प्रैक्टिकली करूँ टेस्ट करुँच प्रोडक्ट हिसाब से आउटपुट देना मार्केट रे बिक्री कर. टेक्सटाइल होगा टेक्सटाइल जहाँ से पढ़ुं विविंग कर एनवायरमेंटल साइंस होगा से निजर बोटानिकल म्यूजियम कर विभिन्न प्रकार सब आम जो कहे माने एक्सपेरिमेंटेशन विथ द हाइट्स ऑफ ट्री बोनसाई गछ विभिन्न प्रकार डेवलप कर सुंदर पेंटिंग सब कर. इट इज अ काइंड ऑफ ब्लेसिंग इन द वर्ल्ड इन टर्म्स ऑफ एजुकेशन. तमें जब देख जन बहुत फेमस एनवायरमेंटालिस्ट अच्छा वंदना शिव शुणी जदि सी एमती गोटे प्रकार एनवायरमेंट को प्रोटेक्शन दवाई गोटे कैंपेन आ गोटे यूनिवर्सिटी जो कि से चाहते सब प्रकार सीड्स उपर स्टडी हो केमितिका तमे जेनेटिक इंजीनियरिंग रो रहुची जिंस कौन तमर ओरिजिनल सीड्स रोची से सब ऊपर से करछन. तो रविंद्रनाथ टैगोर से शांति निकेतन भलिया गोटे वंडरफुल जिंस करिले जोथरे कि ही कंसीडर दैट सब प्रकार लर्निंग मेथड्स नेचुरल सेटिंग रे होबा कथा. फील्ड रे रहिबो गछ छाई तळे बसिबो ग्रीनरी रहिबो चारियाडे. So he told that India being such a beautiful country blessed with so very much beauties of nature, why are we restricted within the four walls of classroom? We should go to the fields and we should go to the open air field and we should learn. आउ ए सब जिनस भितर से आउ गोटे जिनस जोटा को बहुत एम्फासिस करथिले दैट वाज रिगार्डिंग द मदर टंग. सो ही ऑलवेज सेड दैट तमने निजर मदर टंग लैंग्वेज को मध्य एम्फासिस करता कथा. ही सेज दैट फॉरेन लैंग्वेज इज bringing a lot of difficulties in handling and gaining knowledge, and foreign language may not be able to bring a kind of local touch to all kinds of understanding. because it is going to develop a kind of universalistic pattern of education. ମାନେ ଗୋଟେ ୟୁନିଭର୍ସାଲ ୱେରେ ତମେ ଏଜୁକେସନ ପାଉଛ କାହିଁକି ନା ଆମେରିକାରେ, କାନାଡାରେ, ଜର୍ମାନୀରେ, ରଷିଆରେ ସବୁ ଜାଗାରେ ହିଁ ତମର ସପୋଜ ଇଂଲିଶ ୟୁଜ ହଉଛି, ଜର୍ମାନୀ ୟୁଜ ହଉଛି, ରଷିଆନ ୟୁଜ ହଉଛି, ए सब यूज है तमर गोटे यूनिवर्सलाइजेशन हो इंडिया को आसला बेलू आम केते परिमाण रे यूनिवर्सलिज्म करि परिबा जदि आमे निजर मदर टंग किंबा लैंग्वेज को एम्फेसिस करि पारुने किंबा हिंदी यूज करि पारुने देन दैट वुड ब्रिंग ए लोकल टच टू द एंटायर अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ नॉलेज. So Rabindranath Tagore had immensely contributed to the field of philosophy, literature, rationalism, logical reasoning, and almost all kinds of aura. So he was a pioneer contributor in terms of education in India. Next, we are discussing about Mahatma Gandhi. Now, Mahatma Gandhi, हम सब कौन कहले? हमें जानिए जे गांधी सबुबले ही एम्फेसिस करछन्ते स्वदेशी मेथड्स को फॉलो करबा पे आ तांकर गोटे मेजर कैंपेन जोटा ड्यूरिंग द इंडिपेंडेंस रहला दैट इज नोन एज नई तालीम. नई तालीम मीन्स हम नया ऐसा कुछ करेंगे, नया ऐसा तालीम लाएंगे जिससे कि लोगों को ज्यादा से ज्यादा जीवन व्यवहारित करने के लिए पैसा मिल सकेगा. तो ही वाज एम्फसाइजिंग ऑन वोकेशनल ट्रेनिंग. तामने कोन एमिके गोटे प्रकार तालीम जोतरे कि तमे अख चकर जिंस सब हो किंबा तमरो टेक्सटाइल इंडस्ट्री रो हो किंबा तमरो कार्पेंट्री हो, एग्रीकल्चर हो, स्पिनिंग हो, ए सब जिंस करिकिना तमे हैंडीक्राफ्ट हे गला किंबा विलेज स्केल इंडस्ट्री हे गला सब जिंस रे किछि ए भलिया योगदान दबो जोतरे कि तमरो दैनंदिन जीवन रो जो बंचिला पई तमरो जति के लाइवलीहुड व्यवहार करबा पई जिंस दरकार सेटा तमे जेंति पाई परबो. तो सेटा से कहले नई तालीम. So education for him was a kind of vocational training which would definitely help you to get some income. जदि तुम पाखे इनकम हे परिबनी, जदि तुम पाखे से भलिया गोटे अचीवमेंट हे परिबनी ताले केते भी तमे निजर एजुकेशन रो सार्थकता आनि परिबो. हला ताके से एनकरेज करले ऑल सेक्शंस ऑफ सोसाइटी. तामने जेंति आमे केतडा थिंकर को ये रे देखु जे केवल धनी लोक मानकर ही आमे देखु जे सेमाने एजुकेशन को एक्सेस करि परछन्ती. गांधी कहले जे ना केवल धनी लोक कहीं एक्सेस करेंगे all categories of society including horizons and untouchables should be also in a position to get the नई तालीम. तामने कोन जो माने ए तळ वर्गर लोक रहउचंती समाज रे सेमान को मध्य तमे जदी केमती कार्पेंट्री करिवो, केमती एग्रीकल्चर करिवो, केमती स्पिनिंग करिवो ए सब विषय रे बुझै पारिवो आ तांको ट्रेनिंग दे पारिवो डेफिनेटली सेमाने निजर इकोनॉमिक कंडीशन को स्ट्रेंथन करि पारिबे एंड सेमाने इनकम करि पारिबे. वंस they start incoming, definitely it is going to bring change in the entire social stratification. जदि तमे इनकम करि परछो काली सकाळ को तमे जो तळ पोजीशन जो सोसाइटी रे थिलो से पोजीशन रे आ रहिबो नाही आ डेफिनेटली तमे डेवलपमेंट रो पाथरे आगे गिना जीवो. So they should not be interfered by the state. तो महात्मा गांधी को अनुसार केबे भी स्टेट इंटरफेयर करबा कथा नहे एई भलिया प्रोसेस ऑफ एजुकेशन रे काहेकि स्टेट से इंटरफेयर करूची ताहले तार जो गुटे हिडन इंटरेस्ट रहिची किंबा स्वार्थ रहिची ता जो बोली लोक माने अफेक्टेड हेबे. So the best possible means to get नई तालीम is less interference by the state. Okay, and Mahatma Gandhi also favored mother tongue. जेमती आमे अन्य मान को देखुथिले सेमती से मदर टंग रे एजुकेशन को बहुत एनकरेज करथिले. तापरे आमे देखु जे श्री अरविंदो विषय. Aurobindo was mainly a spiritual and educationally oriented thinker, Indian political thinker or socio-political thinker who was from the period of 1872 to 1950. So 1926 रे Aurobindo तांकर गोटे निजर आश्रम कले. आज मध्य श्रीमा अरविंदर विभिन्न ग्रुप रोची आ तमे विभिन्न जगह देखिबो आमे अरविंदर भक्त बोली सेमानकर भजन सम्मेलन हे गला भजन आस्था हेगला आउ सब प्रकार तमर डिस्कशन अरविंद श्रीमांकर हेगला सेम सब होची तो हमें देखुचे जे से जो आश्रम से करथिले सेतरे से कहले जे एजुकेशन रो केवल मूल लक्ष्य हबा दरकार जे से मानव सभ्यतार मानसिकता को बुझी पारछे माने स्टडीइंग द ह्यूमन माइंड should be the only way and should be the only aim of education. So he said that children should be given the freedom to choose their own qualities, virtues, capacities, capabilities and career. तामने एटी जंती समान सब देखुथुबो आजि काली कार परिस्थिति कोन हेलानी बापा मां मानकर गौरव सब लागिची जे छुआ माने कि इंजीनियर हबो कि डॉक्टर हबो कि आउरी कोन कोन बड़ बड़ डिसिप्लिन रे जॉइन करिवो किंतु से सब दौड़ भितर केही पचारू नांती जे पिला कोन चाहूची पिलार फ्रीडम देकिना ताकू को जिंस सब्जेक्ट भल लागुची को वर्च्यूज और कैपेसिटी तार स्ट्रांग अछि सेटा केही देखु नाहंती जेते मो तुमको कहिबी आमे पढिला बळे भी से जिंस होखला स्कूल रे तमानी सब भी पढिला बळे सेम जिंस देखिथिबो जेते बळे आर्ट्स किंबा ह्यूमैनिटीज रो सब्जेक्ट तमे चूज करूछो जेते बळे बहुत जण रिलेटिव्स टू आरंभ करी सोसाइटी रो अनेक अनेक लोक तुमको तुम पेरेंट्स को विभिन्न प्रकार क्वेश्चन आ विभिन्न प्रकार ऑफेंडिंग जिंस सब करते जे तुम कोन आर्ट्स लेकिना कोन करबो साइंस नबा कथा साइंस से जदि नोनी हेले कॉमर्स से नो पूरा देखना आर्ट्स लेकिना कोन करबो एमि सब विभिन्न प्रकार जिंस तमे सुनछो ए किछि दिन तळे मोर जने माने पीसी को पुओ से मते फोन करथिले बैंगलोर रो यू विल बी सरप्राइज्ड टू लिसन व्हाट ही टोल्ड इट इज एग्जैक्टली रिलेटेड टू जो जिंसरम कोन बुझे बुझाची ही इज नाउ एट द एज ऑफ 40 प्लस ठीक अछि जने इंजीनियर ऑस्ट्रेलिया जाइकिना मते काम करचंदी बैंगलोर रे ही सेटल से मते फोन करकिना कहउचंदी जे मु एई जो गोटे लाइफ पैटर्न इन आईटी सेक्टर सेटारे पूरा पूरी एकदम डिस्टर्ब मूलरू मु चाहूली ह्यूमैनिटीज आ आर्ट्स लाइन रे जिबा पई किंतु घरर प्रेशर जो मु जाई पारिनी नाउ आई वांट टू कम बैक and study the role of spiritualism and Ayurveda in Indian society. So I was taken aback and I told him it's never late, but still you have taken a long time to take this decision. So he said कि समाज और फैमिली में इतने प्रेशर जे इंजीनियर किंबा डॉक्टर छड़ा आउ किछि तमे हेई पारिबनी इट टुक मी लॉट ऑफ टाइम कारण मो निजे इनकम करी निजे फैमिली पई सेविंग्स करी निजे पाठ पढिबा पई टंका रखि सारला परे एबे मु चाहूची आईआईटी कि आईआईएम किंबा जेएनयू भलिया किंबा ए भलिया किछि त भलो जागा रे मोर रिसर्च इंटरेस्ट आ मोर पैशन को डेवलप करी माने कोन होची हम सोसाइटी रे गोटे कंटीन्यूअस प्रेशर होची जोथे कि पिला मानन को तांकर को दरकार पढिबा पई कि तांकर को एस्पेक्ट स्ट्रांग होची कि सीए कोथरे जॉइन करिया को चाहछन सेटा दिया हो नाही पिला मानन को ऊपर प्रेशर करिके ना गोटे डिटरमाइंड डिसिप्लिन किंबा कैरियर रे ही जॉइन करिबा पई समस्त सब बेले फोर्स करछन. Then Aurobindo told that the central aim of national education should be to strengthen the power of the human mind and evoke the will and ability to use knowledge, character and culture. तामने कौन है तुमको एजुकेशन गोटे एमिति स्थिति को आनी दबा दरकार जो स्थिति रे कि तमरो मानसिक स्थिरता आउरी स्ट्रांग होबो एबिलिटी जोथे कि तमे तमरो सेई भलिया गोटे नॉलेज किंबा ज्ञान को व्यवहार करि परिबो सेटा स्ट्रांग होबो आ तमरो संस्कृति तम कल्चर को मध्य तमे स्ट्रांगली यूज करि पारिबो तामे कोन होला तीनटा जिंस होला गोटे होची ह्यूमन माइंड गोटे होची एबिलिटी टू यूज द नॉलेज केवल तमे पढि देले होबनी सेही पाठ पढिथिबा जिंसटा को तमे केते दूर यूटिलाइज करि परछो केते दूर इंप्लीमेंट करि परछो सेटा मध्ये देखिबा दरकार आ गोटे होची तमरो संस्कृति को मध्य सब बेले फॉलो करके ना जीवा दरकार संस्कृति को जब तुम छाड़ी दबो ताले तुम केबे हेले भी आगु बढ़ी पारिबो नाही तामे तुम कोन बुझो नेशनल एजुकेशन जेटा हमरो एजुकेशन एट द नेशनल लेवल जेटा रहउची सेटा मेनली एई तीनटा जिंस ऊपर काम करबा दरकार पावर ऑफ द ह्यूमन माइंड एबिलिटी टू यूज नॉलेज एंड रिटेनिंग द कैरेक्टर ऑफ द कल्चर तापर नेक्स्ट जो थिंकर को हम डिस्कस करूचे से होचंती जे कृष्णमूर्ति जे कृष्णमूर्ति जने बहुत लैंडमार्क रिवोल्यूशन किंबा लैंडमार्क चेंजेस आने थिबा लीडर्स मान को भीतर काउंट होंती he was from 1895 to 1986 his period was from this he has written extensively on education on spiritualism and many more things तो सी कौन कले 1881 रे थियोसॉफिकल सोसाइटी रो कंस्ट्रक्शन कले थियोसॉफिकल सोसाइटी वाज कंसीडर्ड टू बी वन ऑफ द गेटवेज टू फ्रीडम जो वे सब ऑर्थोडॉक्स आइडियाज होतिला से सब ऑर्थोडॉक्स आइडियाज भितरे किछि जदि गोटे लिबरल एजुकेशन सिस्टम हमको आसुतला सेटा थिला थियोसॉफिकल सोसाइटी द्वारा स्कोप ऑफ एजुकेशन अकॉर्डिंग टू जे कृष्णमूर्ति should be to read and write in such a manner that it should widen the scope of education in bringing happiness हैला तो से कोन कहले जे जत्ते लोक अछंती ताको पाखे बड़ बड़ डिग्री अछि बहुत बड़ बड़ ओनर्स अछंती बिजनेस रो एते भलो डेवलपमेंट करछंती से समस्त को पाखरे हैप्पीनेस किंतु हमें देखिबा को पाउ ସେମାନେ ଏତେ ଏଜୁକେଟେଡ ହଉଛନ୍ତି ଏତେ ଉପରକୁ ଚଢୁଛନ୍ତି କିନ୍ତୁ ଜୀବନରେ ଯୋଉ କେତେଟା ଛୋଟ ଛୋଟ ଜିନିଷରେ ତମେ ଖୁସି ହେଇପାରିବ ସେ ଖୁସିଟା ହିଁ ତାଙ୍କ ପାଖରେ ରହୁନି ତ ସିଏ ଏଜୁକେସନକୁ ବେସିକାଲି ହ୍ୟାପିନେସ ଆଉ ସାଟିସ୍ଫାକ୍ସନ ସହିତ ଯୋଡୁଛନ୍ତି ସେ କହୁଛନ୍ତି ଯେ ତମେ ଯଦି ଏଜୁକେଟେଡ ଅଛ କିନ୍ତୁ ତମେ ତମ ଜୀବନରେ ଖୁସିରେ ରହିପାରୁନ ସେ ସବୁ ଡିଗ୍ରୀର କିଛି ମାନେ ନାହିଁ ତମେ କେମିତି ଖୁସିରେ ରହିପାରିବ ଆଉ ସେ ଏଜୁକେସନ को यूज करि परिबो सैटिस्फैक्शन आनिबा पई सेटा को तमे देखो से कहते इज डिग्री ब्रिंगिंग हैप्पीनेस एंड एजुकेशन इज ओपनिंग द होराइजन्स ऑफ सैटिस्फैक्शन और ग्रूमिंग ऑन हैप्पीनेस तमे जहाँ जहाँ सब पढ़ुच से तुम सैटिस्फैक्शन और हैप्पीनेस आसुची ना तुम से फेलियर देखुच जदि तुम मैंने सब मन पकब एबे रिसेंटली गोटे इनसीडेंट आम आखि सामना को आसीला गोटे बहुत बड़ कंपनी रो ओनर कैफे कॉफी डे तांकर जे ओनर ही कमिटेड सुइसाइड कौन पाई सुइसाइड हला डेफिनेटली एते हाई प्रोफाइल रे जाई एते टर्नओवर हेई एते सब प्रकार रो पॉजिटिविटी रहिबा सत्य मध्य तांको भितरे हैप्पीनेस रही पालानी आ सी लाइफ को गोटे वाइडर होराइजन रे रियलाइज करबा को फेल हेले जो जो कि he thought of committing suicide academic pressure किंबा competition the pressure किंबा any of these kinds of things compelled him to do suicide so here we are seeing that how education should be in a position to bring happiness if education is not bringing happiness then that education cannot be defined as education so je krishna murthy कहउचंती जे जदि मॉडर्न एजुकेशन हमको डिग्री दोची हमरो सीवी रो पेज बढ़ौची किंतु हम पई हैप्पीनेस आनी पारुनी ताहले इट इज ए फेलियर ऑफ मॉडर्न एजुकेशन सो ऑल ऑफ यू विल एग्री विथ मी that modern education रे एमिति भी किछि एस्पेक्ट रहउची जो जिंस गुडा को कि हमरो दैनंदिन जीवन रे खुशी आ हस खुशी रो लेवल को कमे दोची जहा फल रे कि तमे निजर ऑप्टिमम यूटिलाइजेशन ऑफ एजुकेशन करि पारुनो so these are high times in which we have to ask such questions that whether modern education is fulfilling the quotient of happiness modern education द्वारा आमे खुशी पाउचे कि modern education द्वारा हमरो सब प्रकार satisfaction level को आमे visualize कि realize करि पाचे कि ना सेटा जस्ट खाली डिग्री और सीवी रो पेज बढ़ेबा पे रहउची आ आमे किंतु से खुशी टाको फील करि पारुना हो तो ये जिनस गुड़ाक हूँ गोटे इम्पोर्टाट जिनस जो कि तुम जे कृष्ण मूर्ति अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑन एजुकेशन आहरी बेटर वे जापर तापर नेक्स्ट होती हमर लास्ट इंडियन फिलोसोफर जोटा हम डिस्कस करबा इज राधा कृष्णन हम सब जानथिबो हमें सेलिब्रेट करछे टीचर्स डे हमें केमति तो सेलिब्रेट करछे राधा कृष्णन को जो फाउंडेशनल बेसिक आइडियोलॉजी गुड़ा को प्रोवाइड कराइछे ता ऊपर वी आर सेलिब्रेटिंग टीचर्स डे तो सी कौन कहले जे एजुकेशन रो जदि तुम बेटर फ्यूचर देखिया पई चाहुचो ताले प्रथमे दोस हु आर द एजुकेटर्स कालीर मोर डिस्कशन रे हमें कथा हेतिले अबाउट द एजुकेटर्स मान को आप भलो आनिबा को पड़ो if you draw the best minds into the teaching profession then definitely they are going to give the best result तमे जदि टीचर्स मान को भलो आनी पारुचो ताले सेमने definitely they are going to contribute towards good teaching and good teaching is again going to contribute towards good learners or good students then ए जो फोरम रे इक्यू रो काउंसलर हिसाब रे आमे अछु आ तमे लर्नर हिसाब रे अछो इफ a particular counselor or a particular discussant is giving you information which are very useful for you then definitely you are going to utilize it and you are going to bring Lawrence to the course and you are also going to be good learners who can substantially contribute towards the nation building and the society's upliftment. But যদি counselor level where there is some problem or যদি our discussion level where there is some problem that it is going to lead to some kind of problematic discussion which will again not help you in realizing the goals of the society and accordingly nation building रे contribution मध्य तम मानकर सब reduced ହେଇଯିବ ସେଥିପାଇଁ ରାଧାକୃଷ୍ଣନ କହିଲେ ଯେ ଯଦି ତମେ ଟିଚିଂ ପ୍ରଫେସନ ରେ ଭଲ କାଉନସିଲର୍ସ ଟିଚର୍ସ ଏଣ୍ଡ ଡିସ୍କସନ୍ସ କୁ ଆଣିପାରିବ ତାହେଲେ definitely it is going to bring Lawrence to the entire country. Next he told that students should be always encouraged to join extracurricular activities. And in that extracurricular activities, he had emphasized on National Cadet Corps, that is NCC. NCC, NSS, Red Cross, all of these things are youth organizations, student youth organizations, जो कि तमे जदि join करिवो ताले definitely तमे बहुत exposure पाइबो wider horizon को बुझी पारिबो आउ entire society प्रति तमरो गुटे conscious citizen हिसाब रे contribution मध्य बहुत अधिक परिमाण रे develop करिवो ओके so this is the way in which you can really contribute towards the society. After the last only that he cautioned that the experiment in democracy would suffer if education was not accorded high priority and that its future leadership would be thinking without good teachers. ता माने होची जे ताको कहबा अनुसार जदि जो डेमोक्रेसी को तमे बिल्ड करछो से डेमोक्रेसी रे जदि भलो लीडरशिप तमे चाहछो आ भलो प्रोडक्टिविटी जदि तमे चाहछो ताहले केवल गुड टीचर्स ही से जिनसटा को आनी पारिबे जदि तमे गुड टीचर्स काउंसलर्स किबा डिस्कसेंट्स को नो आनिबो ताहले तमरो जो एक्सपेरिमेंट तमे डेमोक्रेसी से करछो दैट वुड बी ए टोटल फेलियर आउ से फेलियर एते परिमाण रे हबो जे एंटायर सिस्टम को से गुटे बुडी जाउतबा जहाज भलिया तुमको पानी रे से बुडे दबो तमे कोनसी ऑप्शन पाइबनी जोथरे कि तमे से भलिया गुटे मेजर प्रॉब्लम को सॉल्व करकिना आगु को बढ़ी पारिबो so this was the way in which Radha Krishnan tried to make us understand about the relevance of education in Indian society. So with this, I will take a small break from discussing this because with this we have completed what are the opinions of the Indian philosophers in terms of education. So now it is your turn. तमे unmute करो समस्त speaker को आमे अल्प समय पे ए विषय डिस्कशन करिबा तापरे आमे इंटरनेशनल सिनेरियो रे को थिंकर्स माने एजुकेशन ऊपर कोन कहिसंती से जिंसटा को आमे फोकस करिबा. Yes, I would like to now interact with all of you. Unmute करकिना कुहो. You can even write to me in the chat box. Any suggestions, any questions, any kind of input you want to put to the discussion? हाँ, कुहो, पिलामाने कुहो. So, I'm not getting any question in the chat box. Sangram, can you hear me? Sangram?
Yes, ma'am.
हाँ, संग्राम जदि कहार किसी क्वेश्चन किंबा किसी डिस्कशन अच्छी थी कि हमें टाइम दबा so that किसी जदि हमको इनपुट्स आसुची. Okay, Praveen has
Yeah.
told that the session is good and he has got no doubt till now. It is not only about doubt, जदि तमनको भितरु की केही किछि डिस्कशन करबाक चाहछन्ती किंबा जहा मु कहूची से जिनसटा निज लाइफ रे मतलब कोठी तमाने एक्सपीरियंस करछन्ती रिलेट करछन्ती that also you can share. काहेकि this should not be only one way. केवल मु कहिबी आपण माने सुनिबे सेमति न हो. निजे भी कोन से एक्सपीरियंस जोटा हमें डिस्कस करछे जदि सिमिलरिटीज अछि यू कैन कम. लिपि रानी प्रवीणा
मैडम हमें इलिच विषय डिस्कस करूथिले
हाँ
तो इलिच रो हमें सडनली हमें जो थिंकर्स को इंडियन पर्सपेक्टिव रे डिफरेंट थिंकर्स मान को डिस्कशन कले सो सी ए जहां भी थिंकर्स माने तांकर व्यू हमर इलिच को व्यू सहित किछि मैच करूची तेनु करे हम डिस्कशन करूची केटा
नहीं एक्चुअली प्रवीणा राइट प्रवीणा ना प्रवीणा कुमार
हां मैम प्रवीण
हाँ प्रवीण सुन मु तुमको कहबी एक्चुअली तमरो जो मॉड्यूल अछि से मॉड्यूल रे यूनिट वाइज सब जिंस गुडा को जाउची तो हमरो जोटा हमें ओरिजिनेशन ऑफ एजुकेशन विषय पढुतिले आ सेतिरे जो फंडामेंटल थिंकर्स थिला सेही थिंकर्स मानन को हमें काली रो क्लास आ आजि रो फर्स्ट हाफ रे जो पोस्ट मॉडर्निज्म ऊपर कथा हेले सेतिकी रे एक्चुअली सरी जाउची हैला ता परे गोटे यूनिट स्टार्ट होची जोथे कि इंडियन फिलोसॉफिकल थिंकर्स मान को हमें डील करछे तो हमरो जो लास्ट रे इवान इलिच विषय हमें डिस्कस करला परे जो इंडियन फिलोसॉफिकल थॉट ऊपर हमें स्टार्ट करछे इट इज बिकॉज़ कि हमको सेही अनुसार करिकुलम और मॉड्यूल टा नउची इमितिरे अदरवाइज तमे देखिबा को चाहिले एजुकेशन ऊपर इन वाइडर फॉर्म हमें कौन थिंकर्स कहिसंती फंडामेंटल थिंकर्स तापरे इंडियन फिलोसॉफिकल थिंकर्स तापरे वेस्टर्न थिंकर्स एमिति मुख्यतः तीनटा कैटेगरी हे जाई प्रथमे होची क्लासिकल फंडामेंटल थिंकर्स तापरे होची तमरो इंडियन सोशल थिंकर्स तापरे तमरो वेस्टर्न थिंकर्स तो एबेका परिस्थिति रे हमें क्लासिकल एजुकेशन थिंकर्स आउ इंडियन सोशल थिंकर्स को सारिले तो से जो ट्रांजिशन ता हला इट इज अ वेरी गुड क्वेश्चन जो ट्रांजिशन ता हला तमरो फ्रॉम इवान इलिच टू द नेक्स्ट इंडियन फिलोसॉफिकल थिंकर रविंद्रनाथ टैगोर एटा एथि पई हला जे आमे गुटे फंडामेंटल थिंकर्स रो हम इंडियन कॉन्टेक्स्ट को जिंसटा सुनिबा को चाहिए आ वंस एटा हम जतले चेष्टा करूची एटी हमें सरुची कोन इंडियन सोशल एजुकेशन थिंकर्स को सरुची सरिला परवर्ती फेज का जो हमें डिस्कशन करे जो डिस्कस करबा सेटा हमर वेस्टर्न एजुकेशन थिंकर्स ऊपर डिस्कस करबा तो जदी किंतु रिलेटिविटी को देखिबा को चाहिबो समस्त ही एजुकेशन ऊपर पहुंचंती द ओनली थिंग इज कि वी आर ट्राइंग टू अंडरस्टैंड इट फ्रॉम डिफरेंट लोकेशनल पॉइंट गोटे हमें फंडामेंटल थिंकर्स को बुझिले तापरे हमें इंडियन फिलोसॉफिकल थिंकर्स को बुझिले आ डिस्कशन करे हमें बुझिबा वेस्टर्न थिंकर्स चिन्मय शेखर साहू तमरो एटी व्हाट्सएप ता कोन पे डिस्प्ले हेलानी what is this? The present now re click for the law. There's something which is coming. You can stop sharing your screen. Chinmay Sekhar Sahu. Okay, Prabin, I think I have made it clear कि हमें काहे की से जिनसा को करिले.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, welcome. Then we have Shailendra Saman. जे कि हमको पचाचंदी Aurobindo education should be founded on the study of human minds. हाँ, शैलेंद्र तमे जो क्वेश्चन टा पचारुछ सेटा सत्य कथा जे आमे अरविंदो एजुकेशन जतबेले बुझुचे it is a way in which we are trying to understand the human mind. माने अरविंदो हमको कहिले जे तमे माने एजुकेशन को जति बुझिबा को चाहुच किंबा एजुकेशन रो यूटिलिटी जति बुझिबा को चाहुच ताले प्रथम स्तर रे तमे मनीष मानकर मानसिक स्तर को बुझिबा दरकार because education is considered to be a kind of output of human mind and the requirements of the society. तो सोसाइटी जहाँ रिक्वायर करूची से जिनस गुड़ाक आमर ह्यूमन माइंड रे रहूची आमे जदि ह्यूमन माइंड को एजुकेशन साहाय्य रे बुझी परिबा ताले डेफिनेटली इट इज गोइंग टू हेल्प अस टू अंडरस्टैंड द सोसाइटी इन ए बेटर मैनर. तम मानक पाखापाखी एरिया रे जदि कोठी अरविंदो स्कूल थाए किंबा अरविंदो लाइब्रेरी थाए किंबा लाइफ रे जदि तमे केतबेले एक्सपोजर पाउच पंडिचेरी जिबा पई किंबा ए भलिया कोनसी आश्रम को जिबा पई ट्राई टू रीड सम मोर डिटेल्स अबाउट अरविंदो. अरविंदो खूब सुंदर भाबरे ह्यूमन माइंड को स्टडी कले केमिति तमे वाइडर सोसाइटी को जानि परिबो से विषय सब लेखुचंती. So that is definitely going to help you in a wider manner. Okay. So Shailendra, I think जे मु तमरो क्वेश्चन रा आंसर ता देई परिली. Shailendra, am I clear to you? Okay, yes. So Shailendra is saying us that he is clear. हाँ संग्राम. तो हाँ कौन कौन संग्राम?
शिक्षा कहना चाहूँगी मनुष्यर मानसिक स्तर को बुझिकी ही शिक्षार प्रचलन विषय कही सहित शिक्षार 5टी दिग विषय जमीक शारीरिक शिक्षा मानसिक शिक्षा चैतिक शिक्षा आध्यात्मिक शिक्षा आ गोटे मन पड़े ठीक से ये भाव में बहुत सुंदर डिस्क्राइब करी आश्रम विजिट करी एजुकेशन सिस्टम को बहुत नियर टू देखी जमीती कि एग्जांपल ले परिया सेठी पिला मानकर क्लास रो एग्जाम होएनी किबा क्लास प्रमोशन एग्जाम एमती भी न थाए बहुत पिला मानकर केवल माने कोन कंटीन्यूअस इवैल्यूएशन प्रोसेस रे ही से मानकु इवैल्यूएट करा जाय थाए सहित सेठी पिला मानकु जेहेतु गोटे रेसिडेंशियल फॉर्म रे रखी कि ही पढ़ानी देखि कि झिए पिला मानकु मध्य नड़िया गछ चढ़िया मध्य शिक्षा जाय थाए बहुत बढ़िया लगता है एजुकेशन सिस्टम को देखिकी छोट छोट पिला माने भी एमती सब काम कर पारथिबे जेमिति आमे आउ से मानको एट ए टाइम विथ मदर टंग इंग्लिश फ्रेंच संस्कृत ये सब मध्य सिखाई छै लिटरेचर विषय से माने बहुत डेवलप करछन बहुत रिच छै एमती देखिथिली
ना एटा गोटे बहुत भल जिनस संग्राम मान सहित शेयर करुचंती कहीं ना अरविंद आश्रम रे जो भाया शिक्षा प्रदान करकिना पिला माननकु बड़ करा जाउची सेटा गोटे यूनिक पैटर्न जोटा कि आमे ए जो लक्ष लक्ष टंका खर्च करकिना इंटरनेशनल स्कूल रे पिला पढ़ी दउचंती हमरो प्राइवेट स्कूल रे पढ़ी दउचंती सेतिर पिला माने सेतिकी हाई मोरल वैल्यू सिखि पारु नांती किबा सेई भलिया तांकर गोटे स्ट्रांग ग्राउंडिंग रहउनी. संग्राम बहुत भल कथा हमको कहले जे केमती सेमानको मल्टीपल लैंग्वेज सब सिखा होची केमती सेमानको वैल्यू सिस्टम रो जो गोटे बेस थाए सेही जिनसटा सिखा होची आउ केतबळे संग्राम भी मध्य देखिथिबे सेठी सेमानकर मेनली दे चूज द कलर ऑफ व्हाइट एंड ग्रीन आ व्हाइट और ग्रीन को सेमाने कंसीडर करंती एज अ मार्क ऑफ पीस एंड ग्रीनरी जो जिनसे हमें कथा होतले जे नेचर आ पीस ऑफ माइंड आ सैटिस्फैक्शन ए सब जिनस गुडा को रिलेटेड रहुची तो सेमाने कलर ऊपर मध्य बहुत एम्फासिस दियंती स्टूडेंटशिप रे तमरो कोन खाइबो केमति निजर रूटीन रखिबो जो कते संग्राम आम सहित शेयर करुले से सब जिनस गुड़ाक से माने बहुत एम्फासिस दियंती तो माने गोटे गोटे मॉडल जदि किछि रही पारे जोटा कि आमे फॉलो करबा कथा एजुकेशन पाई सेतरे डेफिनेटली अरविंद काइंड ऑफ मॉडल इज हाईली एप्रिशिएबल बहुत भल जिनस बहुत भल जिनस अच्छा आमको एठी जणे आ जणे क्वेश्चन पचारचंती भुवनेश्वर दास हमको पचारचंती जे प्लीज डिस्कस अबाउट डीएन मजुमदार अच्छा डीएन मजुमदार को एस्पेक्ट आपण माने जानिया को चाहछन बिकॉज़ लाइक डीएन मजुमदार इज अ एंथ्रोपोलॉजिस्ट एंड सोशल एंथ्रोपोलॉजिस्ट तो तांकर एक्चुअली माने को एस्पेक्ट आपण बुझिबा को चाहछन ना कोन पचारिया पे चाहछन के क्लियरली लिखंतु ताले हमको समस्त को से जिनसटा डिस्कस करिवारे सुविधा हबो टिके ओके तो एठी को किसी रेस्पॉन्स को पाउनी किंतु जे मते पचारचंती जो डीएन मजुमदार को ऊपर डिस्कस करबा पे अन्य माने जे तो हम ग्रुप में समस्त डिस्कशन रे अछंती मु तम मान को गोटे ब्रीफ कहि दोछि मु एग्जैक्ट क्वेश्चन तांको तो जानि करूनी किंतु डीएन मजुमदार जने एंथ्रोपोलॉजिस्ट थिले जे कि बहुत परिमाण रे काम करचंती ट्राइबल सोसाइटी ऊपर आ इंडियन सोशियोलॉजिस्ट मानकर टॉप लिस्ट सेमानकर तांको ना आसुची तो डेफिनेटली जतबे हमें डीएन मजुमदार को ऊपर किछि जानिया पे चाहछे इट इज रिलेटेड टू द एजुकेशन पैटर्न्स इन टर्म्स ऑफ शेड्यूल कास्ट एंड शेड्यूल ट्राइब सो आई थिंक दिस question needs to be little bit clarified जदि outके clarification मिलबो then that will be easier for us to discuss okay so आगो को जदि आउ कहार किछि discussion करबार अछि they can type or else now I will move to the next part okay okay so see with the discussion with Radhakrishnan we are now completing another aspect and we are entering into the new aspect of Western classical thinkers on education okay so and now whatever we are going to discuss it will be a kind of understanding on the Western philosophers and their standpoint in terms of education the first philosopher जहाँ हम डिस्कस करबा से होचंदी लियो टॉल्स्टॉय so लियो टॉल्स्टॉय was from the period of 1828 to 1910 Tolstoy explained that unequal access to education in Russian society was the root cause of antagonism between the privileged class constitution and small groups which were present in the society. ताले कौन हैला रशियन सोसाइटी को लेकिना लियो टॉल्स्टॉय किछि काम करिले से कौन देखिले जेमति हमें सब सोसाइटी रे रिच एंड पुअर कर डिस्टिंक्शन देखुचे से भलिया टॉल्स्टॉय मध्ये देखिले जे रशियन सोसाइटी रे गोटे कंटीन्यूअस कॉन्फ्लिक्ट किंबा एंटागोनिज्म रहुची बिटवीन द प्रिविलेज्ड क्लास एंड द लोअर क्लास he demanded democratization of education which in effect meant liberating it from the clutches of those who controlled power and harnessing it in favor of the society at large. ता माने से कहिले जे आमे गोटे सोसाइटी रो डेवलपमेंट चाहिए केवल और केवल डेमोक्रेटाइजेशन ऑफ एजुकेशन करिले ही डेवलपमेंट आसीबो डेमोक्रेटाइजेशन ऑफ एजुकेशन माने कोन जेमति मु तुमको कहूची डेमोक्रेटाइजेशन ऑफ इंडियन सोसाइटी ता माने कोन डेमोक्रेसी रे समस्तଙ୍କର ଗୋଟେ ଗୋଟେ ओपिनियन रहिची समस्तଙ୍କର ଗୋଟେ ଗୋଟେ पार्ट रहिची एटी रिच और पुअर रो डायनामिक्स आसुनी से भलिया एजुकेशन को जेतोले आमे कहूचे डेमोक्रेटाइजेशन ऑफ एजुकेशन ता माने कहूची जे आमे एजुकेशन ताको मध्य समस्तଙ୍କ ପାଇଁ ଏମିତିକା ଗୋଟେ ପରିସ୍ଥିତିରେ अवेलेबल ରଖିବା ଯେ ଧନୀ ବର୍ଗ ମଧ୍ୟବର୍ଗୀୟ ନିଚ ବର୍ଗୀୟ ସବୁ ବର୍ଗର ଲୋକମାନେ ଏକା ପରିମାଣରେ से भलिया गोटे शिक्षा जिनसको निज भितर को ग्रहण करि परिबे जेमति आगु केवल धनी लोक माने ही एजुकेशन को पावर नै किना हैंडल करि पारुथले गरीब लोक मान को प्रति एजुकेशन सेति भलो रे डील करिना पहुंच पानथला से भलिया इनइक्वालिटी रहिले सोसाइटी रे डेवलपमेंट होबो नाही ସେଥିପାଇଁ ଲିଓ ଟଲଷ୍ଟୟ ରସିଆନ सोसाइटी को स्टडी करिना प्रथम थर ପାଇଁ କହିଲେ जे जदि तमे चाहुचो जे कौन प्रकार डेमोक्रेटाइजेशन ऑफ एजुकेशन हबो बोली से डेमोक्रेटाइजेशन ऑफ एजुकेशन ओनली एंड ओनली आसीबो बाय गिविंग इक्वल चांस टू एवरीवन पावर जो माने कंट्रोल करछन्ती तांको हातरे जिंस रहिबनी रादर समस्त को एका भागरे मिलिबो ही आर्ग्यूड फॉर फ्रीडम इन स्कूल एंड इन एजुकेशन से कहिले जे गोटे मानसिक विकासर गोटे पथ होउची जेतबेले तमे संपूर्ण भाबरे फ्रीडम दबो किंबा संपूर्ण भाबरे सेमानको एमिति गोटे एनवायरनमेंट दबो जोतरे कि सेमाने निज भाबरे निज जिंस को एक्सप्रेस करि परिबे जेपर जन तमे गोटे प्रकार रो रूल्स रेगुलेशंस किंबा गोटे प्रकार रो प्रेशर ताको ऊपर रहिबो से पर्यंत फ्रीडम इन स्कूल ता तमे अचीव करि परिबनी आ फ्रीडम इन स्कूल अचीव न करि पाले एजुकेशन रो फ्रीडम आसी परिबनी आ फ्रीडम इन एजुकेशन न आसी पाले फ्रीडम इन सोसाइटी भी आसी परिबनी ओके तापरे ही बिलीव दैट चिल्ड्रन आर इनहेरेंटली इनोसेंट एंड परफेक्ट ही एनकरेजेस natural development of children and that should not be disturbed due to education जो जिनसे ना आगुर मध्य हमें कथा हेचे जे जेकोनसी पिला जेतबेले आमे एका संगरे स्कूल रे पढुचे सेतबेले सेमान को नेचुरली डेवलप करिवा पई दिया जाय सेमान को ऊपर कोनसी कंस्ट्रेंट रखे न जाओ आ सेमान को ऊपर कोनसी प्रेशर ऑफ कैरियर न रखा जाओ जे तमे एई पर्टिकुलर डिसिप्लिन रे गले ही हबो अदरवाइज तमे एक्सेल करिबनी सेमिति का जदि कोनसी प्रकार कटकणा रखा होची ताले 100 to 100% excellence हे पारिबो नाही ओके freedom in education was opposed to authoritarianism teaching as well suppose जेमते सम्मान को सेता मु डिस्कशन करूची as a counselor we are having particular time in which you are giving inputs आमे गोटे इंटरैक्टिव वे रे डिस्कशन करूचे suppose तोरा मु कहतांती as a counselor मु कोन से प्रकार क्वेश्चन नबा को चाहूनी डिस्कशन करबा को चाहूनी there is a authority in teaching then that is completely seizing the freedom of teaching freedom of education आ से रहला नहीं कहे ना तमे निजरो जो एक्सपीरियंसेस अछि निजरो मतामत अछि निजरो ब्रॉडर अंडरस्टैंडिंग अछि से विषय किछि कहि पारुनो जदि न कहि पारुचो ताले सेटा केबे भी फ्रीडम किंबा गोटे प्रकार डेवलपमेंट रो फोरम हेई पारिबो नाही सेति टॉलस्टॉय कहले जे फ्रीडम इन एजुकेशन सबबड़े एम्फासिस करा जिबा दरकार आ ऑथोरिटेरियनिज्म टीचिंग केबे भी रहिबा उचित नुहे in India actually maximum of the education patterns in schools and colleges are quite a bit authoritarian in nature जेमति मु कहिबी नमन को भितर बहुत जण ग्रेजुएशन लेवल हे गला किंबा +2 लेवल रे कॉलेजेस रे थिबो यू विल सी दैट टीचर माने तम क्वेश्चन पचारिबा को पसंद करिवे तमे जदि गोटे रो दुईटा क्वेश्चन पचारो सेमाने कबे बसी जाओ आ डिस्टर्ब करनी एक्चुअली दैट इज नॉट द मॉडल एमिति फॉरेन रे स्कूल्स अछि किंबा जहां सब डिस्कशन फोरम रे जोतरे जेमति तमे कहबो ଆମ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆରେ ବି ଡୁନ୍ ସ୍କୁଲ ହେଇଗଲା କିମ୍ବା so called places where you groom the ideas of freedom and liberty, maybe Shantiniketan or places like residential schools, you find ample opportunity for students to ask questions. Because when you are asking questions, when you are sharing your experiences, you are not only sharing your own experiences with your fellow mates, but it is also bringing a confidence. If ମୁଁ କିଛି ଜିନିଷ ସେୟାର କରିପାରୁଛି, ମୋର ମଧ୍ୟ ଗୋଟେ ଷ୍ଟାଣ୍ଡ ପଏଣ୍ଟ ଅଛି ଯୋଉଟା କି ମୁଁ ଇନଷ୍ଟ୍ରକ୍ଟରଙ୍କୁ କିମ୍ବା ଟିଚରଙ୍କୁ କହିପାରୁଛି, ମୋ ସହିତ ଥିବା ଏକା ସାଙ୍ଗରେ 20 କିମ୍ବା 25 ପିଲା ମଧ୍ୟ ମତେ ଶୁଣୁଛନ୍ତି ଆଉ ମୋ କ୍ୱେଶ୍ଚନକୁ ବୁଝିବାକୁ ଚେଷ୍ଟା କରୁଛନ୍ତି. All of these things are part of bringing confidence to your own thinking process. So that is very, very important. That freedom in education always stands as opposed to the authoritarian teaching in the system. And last, he emphasized on the spiritualism in elementary education. Spiritualism in elementary education ର ମାନେ ହେଉଛି ଯେତେବେଳେ ତମେ elementary education ବିଷୟରେ ବୁଝୁଛ, ସେଇଠି ଯଦି spiritualism ର କିଛି କିଛି essence ତମକୁ ବୁଝାଯାଏ କିମ୍ବା the entire cycle of birth, rebirth, कर्म ବିଷୟରେ ବୁଝାଯାଏ, spiritual component କୁ ତମ ଭିତରକୁ positivity ର ସହିତ ଆଣିବାକୁ ଚେଷ୍ଟା କରାଯାଏ, then definitely that is going to bring a new definition of education. Without spiritualism, education perhaps cannot attain its required destination. So this is the way in which we are understanding that Tolstoy also emphasized on spiritualism aspect of education. Okay, देखो आमे जमन सब गोटे सिस्टमैटिक वे रे थिंकर्स मान को बुझिबा को चेष्टा करूचे, आमे डेफिनेटली जानिबा जे जेतबेले आमे वेस्टर्न फिलोसॉफिकल थॉट रो सेगमेंट स्टार्ट करूचे, वी विल नो मोर फाइंड टू सेंटेंसेस. नंबर 1, rejection towards the western education, which earlier we were finding with almost all the thinkers. जते जन थिंकर को विषय मु या आगुरु डिस्कस कली, समस्त को तमे देखिथिबो ସେମାନେ କଣ କହୁଥିଲେ, वेस्टर्न एजुकेशन को एनकरेजमेंट दउनांती नंबर 1, ଆଉ नंबर 2 होची कोन मदर टंग को ସେମାନେ एनकरेज करूछन. एई दुईटा जिंस एई सेगमेंट रे आमे आउ पाइबा काहे पाइबानी, काहे ना these people are themselves part of the western philosophical thought. So they are studying Russian society, they are studying Brazilian society, they are studying American society. So there is no scope that they will be in a position to say that western education should not be encouraged, or in a position to say that only mother tongue should be emphasized. Okay, so this is the wider distinction. Then we come to the next social thinker, John Dewey. John Dewey was from the period of 1859 to 1952. So he says that the ultimate goal of schools should be fostering growth and expansion of democracy. ये कहले जे आमर डेमोक्रेसी को ही एनहांसमेंट आनिबार मीन्स रहिबा दरकार टू स्कूल एंड एजुकेशन. तमे जदि हम गोटे क्वेश्चन पचारिबा जे व्हाट इज द एम ऑफ एजुकेशन, देन Dewey will answer it as the aim of education is to bring expansion of democracy. ए समस्त को डिस्कशन रे तमने गोटे जिंस कॉमन पाउथबो जे एजुकेशन और डेमोक्रेसी को बहुत क्लोजली रिलेट करा होछि, आ एजुकेशन जदि भलरे रहिबो ताले डेमोक्रेसी मध्ये भलरे रहिबो. इट इज एन काइंड ऑफ कॉन्कॉमिटेंट वेरिएशन एंड रिलेशन. जेमति कि मो कहबी एजुकेशन रो राइज जदि ठीक रे होतो, डेमोक्रेसी मध्ये ठीक रे होबो. एजुकेशन रो जदि माने फॉलोअप ता भलरे होबोनी ताले डेमोक्रेसी मध्ये भलरे होबोनी. सो वी सी दैट एजुकेशन एंड वेरिएबल्स आर क्लोजली रिलेटेड टू ईच अदर. ओके, so next he says schools must be given scope to raise children in such a way that they should be not be authoritatively dominated by teachers and should be allowed to ask lots of questions in order to encourage them to interact. ଏବେ ଯୋଉ କଥାଟା ତମମାନଙ୍କୁ ଏକ୍ସାମ୍ପଲ ମୁଁ ଦଉଥିଲି ଯେ ଗୋଟେରୁ ଦିଟା କ୍ୱେଶ୍ଚନ ପଚାରିବାକୁ ହେଲେ ତମ ଟିଚର୍ସ ମାନେ ରିଜେକ୍ସନ ଦେଖେଇବେ ସେଇ କଥା ଉପରେ ହିଁ ଏଠି କୁହାହଉଛି। ଏମିତି ଗୁଡାଏ ଇନଷ୍ଟିଚ୍ୟୁଟ ମୁଁ ଦେଖିଛି ଯୋଉଠିକି ଗୋଟେ ଟପ୍ କହିଲା ପରେ କ୍ୱେଶ୍ଚନ ପିଲାମାନେ ପଚାରିବା ପାଇଁ ଚାହିଁଲା ବେଳକୁ କହିବେ ଯେ ୟୁ
Wait, I mean, dear learners, wait, I mean, ma'am has left it out. So just again, he will log it out. Okay, just wait.
So she will log in.
Log in or log out. Okay, dear learners, wait. Ma'am has log. I mean, some technical issues. His net problem is there, so he log it out. Again, he's trying to log in. Okay, so she will join. Okay, students, if you have any problem or you want to ask anything, as long as the ma'am has not joined, so please ask regarding IGNOU if you want to know anything. If any difficulties, if any problem, if you want to know something, let's ma'am join. And before that, if you want to ask anything, then you can put forth your problem. How you find this class? How do you feel this? I mean, teaching of the ma'am.
Excellent.
So it's very good. And so
I
one
mean,
thing I just want to know, if this system, this e-learning system can be continued even after the lockdown.
see now, I mean, the trial method you started this. If it's success, if the students like it, then definitely will continue. But now
So
this is the
definitely,
best mode
definitely.
because
So definitely,
so you are
this yes, sir, please. So please continue.
yeah. I mean, what so what you are telling, I mean, what you are thinking. So this pandemic has, I mean, teach us to move toward the, I mean, e-learning. Okay.
Sir,
So you are planning and you are thinking for that. If you mean if it's good for
e-learning, sir.
everybody, then definitely you will continue this system. Because if somebody is working or I mean housewife or is unable to come to the center,
So I
so you can
believe personally,
sit in the
from
home
my
to
point
join.
of view,
Yeah.
so from my point of view, I'm
So I
Manoj.
mean,
So from my point of view, so I'm working in somewhere, and yes, from this is my opinion. So what and you asked to say something about the IGNOU. So if this is like a feedback. I'm saying this is like a feedback or a suggestion also. So if the e-learning system can be continued even after the lockdown, this will be very efficient for all the students are there who are feeling who are facing difficulties to join the regional branches to attend the classes in every weekend. So it will be very efficient for them to join the classes or to gain the knowledge by sitting in home.
no, in several courses we've already started e-counseling. Okay, like one there is a
So
course called
yes,
PUPL. So for that only you are going for the
sir.
online counseling classes. There is no offline counseling. So now Inul is
So
planning and thinking now instead of the offline, you will switch over to online because the network connectivity. See, like this, what I'm telling you, 100 students are there
so
in this course, but only 20 is joined because staying in the home, if students are not joining, so that means maybe some technical problem might be network.
there will be sir.
Yeah, I mean, so that part also you have to think.
There will be and if,
See, if how
definitely sir. So they will join also. I don't think that if they are not joining the e-learning classes, I don't think they will be joined. They will be able to go to the regional branches in every
no, see,
weekend.
what I'm telling you, it is cost effective also because suppose 100 students in 10
Yes,
center,
sir.
then you have to organize the 10 counseling classes in different centers. But now you are only
Sir.
organizing one counseling session and all are joining to the internet. So it is a good for us also.
Sir.
So it's a new beginning.
Sir.
So we are also thinking for that only. So if everybody is like this, okay, you will
Sir.
continue, not an issue. And see, another plus point is this. Suppose somebody missed
Yes,
this.
sir.
So
I believe
now,
all will be appreciate, all will appreciate this step of IGNOU of e-learning system. I believe all will appreciate, sir.
because you are recording the session also and putting in the YouTube and you are putting in the group. So if somebody can miss out the session, so he can go through with the recording. Now it's a good thing. So that only you are planning. If it is successful, then definitely you will
Sir,
continue.
sir.
So we are also thinking for
So
same way.
this should be successful, sir.
Definitely, if it will success, so I will. We will also think in the same thing only. If students
I am
like
also
this,
joining
then
the
we don't
class.
have any
I am also
problem.
joining class. So I'm also joining any class after 3 or 4 years. After 3 or 4 years, I am joining any classes. So it feels like like
That's good.
I'm
That's
re
great.
yes, I'm re
Okay.
it's like I'm in a 4 year.
The
I'm
words of
re,
circulate with
So,
the students.
sorry for this inconvenience. There was some problem in my internet, so I couldn't connect in between.
Okay, go ahead, ma'am. I mean, you continue. Okay, whatever you left out, but you use more English than ODI because students are saying they want more English than ODI. I mean, mix the language, more English than ODI.
So no, actually,
it is
see,
okay, sir.
actually, there is some confusion maybe because see, I mean, how to do it? Because see, if I can go like the way yesterday I was teaching, so then people started saying that you need more Odia, or like you need a combination of that.
Ma'am,
So
what I'm telling you, go with 80-20. 80% English,
So
20%
bilingual,
ODI.
so bilingual, sorry, sir. So bilingual is okay, sir. Ma'am was fine.
No, why I'm telling you? Because throughout India,
So,
you are uploading the YouTube
sir,
channel. So in that part, people cannot understand ODI. So what I'm telling
sir.
you, 80-20 or 70-30 is all right.
okay, we'll let us.
So Hindi can be there. So Hindi also can
But
be
no,
there, sir.
no, no Hindi,
Hindi
English
also
ODI.
can be. So bilingual will be very much. So
Okay, fine.
so
Okay, ma'am, you continue. Ma'am, you continue.
Okay, okay. So, since my laptop is showing some problem, I think I will be audible in this way, and but I don't know how far I'll be able to share my PPTs with you. But then let me try if it gets in connected with the laptop. Otherwise, the way we were discussing, I'll now try to just explain you because I'm not able to share my screen to all of you since I've connected from the mobile handset. So I think the last thing which we were discussing was regarding John Dew's opinion on what he was telling us about how to go with education. Then we go to the next part of the discussion, that what Antonio Gramsci from 1891 to 1937 has given us to understand how education is operating in Indian society. So Gramsci from 1891 to 1937 is actually saying us that we can understand that education in Indian society is giving a kind of result of intellectuals. Okay, so intellectuals in the sense Gramsci is making us understand that whenever we are trying to access the educational patterns and systems, after going through the education system of almost 10 to 12 years, it results in some kind of output, and that category of output is known as intellectual. He tries to categorize intellectuals in terms of organic intellectuals and traditional intellectuals. So, organic intellectuals are the interest of the ruling class or rich dominating class who generally dominate the poor and the common people. So what happens is that whenever you are saying that there is a complete source of education which is been accessed by rich and dominating category, that results in change in power dynamics. So the entire power dynamics is changed, and it is changed in such a manner that the organic intellectuals, those who belong to the so-called rich categories, they are able to utilize it and they are able to find it in a best possible manner. So when he is discussing about organic intellectuals, it refers to all the people who are belonging to the ruling class. They are rich and they are dominating the poor and the common mass. The next category which he is trying to discuss is about the traditional intellectuals. The traditional intellectuals include administrators, scholars, scientists, theorists, and the common mass who are independent of the dominant group. So here what happens is whenever Gramsci is discussing about the traditional intellectuals, he wants to refer to the category who are not involved with the domination, but he is more sure that that category is not being dominated by the rich people. So he gives us an alternate about the independence of this kind of a group. So he says that the traditional intellectuals are independent in their nature, and that independence can be in such a manner that it may or may not be coming under the dominance of the organic intellectual. So we are clear, I suppose, that there are maybe two aspects of intellectuals which are explained by Antonio Gramsci. One is organic intellectual and the other one is traditional intellectual. Okay? Then he tries to understand education with reference to politics. So how he is trying to understand education with reference to politics? Actually, Gramsci has given this concept of hegemony, and he tries on to bring that concept of hegemony into understanding education. According to Gramsci, intellectuals are the result of education. Intellectuals refers to technical and political leadership, and it must be in a position of having something which is dominating and something which is being dominated. So Gramsci tries to tell us that whenever we are trying to understand education, a definite reference to politics is a must. So, when we are referring to politics, always in politics, there is a kind of dynamic of domination and being dominated. So, he says that in education also, the similar parameters happen, and someone is to dominate and someone is to be dominated. So, the technical and political leaderships which are present in the entire understanding of education and politics are always dependent on such kind of a dynamic where you are finding someone is dominating and someone is being dominated. Education has to be set free from the clutches of both conformity and hegemony so that children who undergo it are able to achieve personal independence. So, he is further trying to make us understand that whenever education is to be set free from the clutches of both conformity and hegemony, then only children can find a way out for their personal independence. That means that even if he is saying that politics and education are interrelated and domination and dominating are always related, but still, when education is going to be freed from such kind of hegemonistic attitude, then only the real independence can be achieved. That means Gramsci is trying to make us understand that in education, a kind of inevitability of such kind of domination of politics is present, but if there can be some state where we can be freed out of such domination and dominating, then it will be the best place for attaining independence of the children. So some critics of Antonio Gramsci also say that this is a kind of utopian concept, that whatever Gramsci is saying cannot be accepted well because it is not practically possible. So we are yet to understand that what Gramsci is saying that may be practically possible or not possible. Then we come to the next thinker, that is Paulo Freire. Paulo Freire was available from the time period from 1921 till 1997. He studied law and he was in Brazilian society. So he was a Portuguese language teacher in a secondary school, and he initiated training
Brazilian poor children and tried to bring some innovative patterns in education. So, what innovative education Paul Ferrier tried to bring to in order to understand education? Let us discuss. His attempt was to bring increase in vocabulary. So Ferrier understood that if you happen to increase the vocabulary, then definitely you are in a position to find some kind of convenience to understand education. माने जेते तमरो शब्दकोश बढ़िबो, जेते प्रकार शब्द तमे कहि पारिबो, that is definitely going to increase your understanding of education. Next, he told about search of generating more number of words. Suppose a particular word you are unable to recall that what it is been termed, then you can try to that word and you can try to get it in such a manner that it increases its vocabulary. Then the other thing is regarding codification of these words into visual images. So he says, whenever you are trying to see some kind of thing, if you can put it into a visual image, then that is going to be retained by your mind in a longer term. That is going to be retained by your psychology in a longer term because you have seen the image of that. Then he also emphasizes on decodification of these words. तामने तांकर कहवा कथा होची जो जिंस सब रहुची ताकू तमे कोडिफाई करि परिबो, डिकोडिफाई करि परिबो, इमेज रे देखि परिबो, and all them are definitely going to contribute towards making a better understanding of education. Then he is trying to make us understand about searching of words in terms of their own culture and trying to find the difference between man and animal. So he wants to say that whenever you try to bring more convenient words so that people can understand, that is helping you to understand education in a better way. So I have already told you in my lecture that there is someone who is educated and someone who are educatee. So whenever teachers or educators are trying to bring convenient words to the learners, it is definitely going to contribute towards enhancement of understanding of education. And after this, we understand that whatever he has made us understand in terms of the Brazilian society can be understood in three main areas. First is community participation, because he always encourages that whenever there will be a kind of community participation, the usages of words and languages are definitely going to increase. Then he encouraged decentralization of education. So he said that education should be always decentralized. Like in our society also, we are seeing that there are primary education, there are higher secondary education, there are college education, then you are also finding the university level education. So different kinds of decentralization of education can help in understanding the entire education process. And the last thing which he is emphasizing is regarding the democratization of schools. So since we have already had a discussion regarding democracy and education, and as well democratization of education within the schools, we understand that democratization of schools are also inevitable to get the understanding of education as a whole. So with this much of discussion, we understand how Paul Ferrier had tried to make us understand about the issues of education. Then we are trying to discuss about Bourdieu. So Bourdieu was again another famous sociologist who had tried to make us understand regarding how education was playing a dominant role in the society. So his main contribution was cultural reproduction of dominant classes. So Bourdieu argued that whatever cultural reproduction was happening, it was happening in the curriculum of the classes that was always a representation of the dominant class. For example, Bourdieu said that whenever you are learning any particular thing regarding democracy, any particular thing regarding economy, any particular thing regarding politics, in all those things, we always refer to the dominant class, those who are rich and those who are very affluent. But we don't refer to the struggles of the poor class, and we don't refer to the struggles of the dominated class. So, according to Bourdieu, children of upper class comprehend things in a better manner, and children of lower class fail to comprehend things in such a manner. Why it happens? କାହିଁକି ମାନେ ତଳ ବର୍ଗର ପିଲାମାନେ ସେମାନେ ଏତେ ଷ୍ଟ୍ରଗଲ କରୁଛନ୍ତି ଆଉ ଭଲରେ ଏଜୁକେସନ ଟାକୁ ବୁଝି ପାରୁନାହାନ୍ତି, କାରଣ ତାଙ୍କ ପାଇଁ ପ୍ରତ୍ୟେକ ଦିନ ହିଁ ହଉଛି ଗୋଟେ ଷ୍ଟ୍ରଗଲ, ସିନ୍ସ ଦେ ଆର୍ ଷ୍ଟ୍ରଗଲିଂ ଫର ହ୍ୟାଭିଂ two squares a meal. So because of which this midday meal scheme was again introduced in the Indian social education system. So if they are struggling for their food, how can you come to the schools and get the education as at par excellence with the upper class? So this is a particular thing which Bourdieu is trying to mention here. Further, he says that social and cultural capital are better with these rich students. That means, what do you mean by social and cultural capital? Whenever you are having connections, known people, and some kind of resources. Suppose there are 50 affluent families, those who are belonging to the good economic condition. Definitely those 50 families are going to give references within themselves and make things easier for their children. That kind of a referential point or that kind of a recommendation is not coming from the affluent families towards the poor children. It is not being provided to the poor children. Only references and recommendations given a particular affluent kind of family. So this is how you understand that the social and cultural capital are better with these rich students. Then he wants to emphasize on elimination of those belonging to the working class takes place because of the failure in the educational system and an understanding of their own position vis-a-vis those belonging to the ruling class. So what happens is, whenever you see that there is a kind of struggles which are going on more and more with the working class, you happen to shift your attention to the elite people. Okay, so elite people are taken as a reference point. Like yesterday in our lecture we were discussing regarding the ideal type of student. So those who are belonging to the rich category, their children are taken as the ideal students. So because of all these things, there is a cultural reproduction of the dominant classes, and the poor class children are not in a position to struggle against such kind of domination, and they are also not in a position to understand that what techniques can help them to break the and come out of the entire process. Then we go to the next part of our discussion, that is regarding education and knowledge. So I would like to tell all of you that when we have discussed the entire ambit of social thinkers, right, starting from classical educational thinkers to the Indian sociological education thinkers, to again the Western educational thinkers, from all these three categories of thinkers, we understand that education and knowledge are interrelated to each other, and you are able to find a knowledge base due to education. While discussing the concept of education and knowledge, we first need to understand that no absolute knowledge or no absolute education is available in our society. So what do we mean by absolute knowledge, or what do we mean by absolute education? So when we are discussing about absolutism, that means supposedly whatever I am discussing with you or whatever I am discussing with my fellow men, all of them would be taken as an absolute way, that itself right there is present and we must follow that. No, it cannot happen so, because everything is relative in its nature. So education and knowledge are not absolute, and they are dependent on different kinds of dynamics. What are such kind of dynamics? One such dynamics we have already known is regarding the rich and the poor category. So the rich people are in a better position to access, and the poor people are not in that better position to access. So rich and poor, the power and the powerless, the haves and the have-nots, the economically sound and the poor. So all of such dynamics are playing a major role. Knowledge here depends on mainly two things. So we can understand that when several kinds of relativity and variables are present, we can categorize the knowledge into two aspects. First is the selection. That means, supposedly I will say that there are 100 students and I want to select 50 students who should represent our country in foreign. So what I will do is that I will randomly select 50 of them and I will take them. Okay, so this is the process of selection. Or if many of you would be working in the research area, so you know how the sample size has been done. So you select or you make a particular pattern in which you can bring such kind of discussion. So there is a kind of selection. The other thing is representation. So I will say that let me try to check the merits of the student and let me try to see how many of them are representing it. Okay, so this is a kind of representation which you are finding from the entire sample or the entire population. So ତାହେଲେ ବୁଝିପାରିଲେ ଦିଟା ଜିନିଷ ରହୁଛି, ଗୋଟେ ହଉଛି ସିଲେକ୍ସନ, ଗୋଟେ ହଉଛି representation. When you are discussing about selection, it means that one is voluntarily selecting things. Suppose voluntarily I select few students who are going to be exposed to such valuable knowledge. But representation is you are trying to find it on the basis of their merit, and accordingly you are trying to represent. Okay. So then we want to see that how education is working as a perpetuation of inequality in the entire process. As we have already discussed that the curriculum is framed in such a manner that it always concentrates on the dominated class. That is the way in which we understand that inequality is persisting because of the education as well. We all aspire that education should be in a position so that it should completely deny inequality. But it happens so that in practical field, inequality is present, and in a way, persistence and perpetuation of inequality also happens. And then we have some kind of example which have been discussed in terms of education and knowledge. For example, you see that Karl Marx has given us a concept of economic determinism. So economic determinism says that all those who are powerful and economically sound, they are going to have a better access to the resources. So supposedly I am giving you an example. There is a particular school which has been owned by X company or X person. So the children of X person and the associates of X group are definitely going to be in an advantageous position as compared to the other categories. So you understand how it is working. Even if we are saying that education should promote equality and it should not try to bring inequality, automatically some kind of inequality is creeping because the school ownership comes into dynamic, the dominant group's resources come into dynamic, the economic determinism comes into dynamic, and the public-private negotiation and the public-private model also comes into the process. So as a whole, if we try to understand, then education and knowledge is having lot number of variables and lot number of issues related to each other. The last concept which we will discuss in today's discussion is the banking concept of education. So all of you must be knowing that whenever we refer to bank, it means a resource where we have saved our account. There is money, there is gold, and all kinds of securities we have banked. ଆମେ ବ୍ୟାଙ୍କରେ ନେଇକିନା ରଖିଛୁ। ତାହେଲେ ଆମେ ଯଦି banking concept of education କହିବା, that would also bring us to same kind of understanding. When we are discussing about education and banking concept of education, it is a very, very interesting thing to be understood that whenever you are discussing about education, education is a place where youth, families, nations, teachers, counselors, students, learners, all of them are putting their resources together. Like today we are on a forum, we are discussing about education. So we are trying to refer to whatever knowledge, ideas and references we understand together. And that is helping us to understand how there is a complete contribution or banking of concept of education. So whenever someone is asking you that what do you mean by banking concept of education, you can definitely answer that whenever we are investing the resources from all quarters of life, youth, students, learners, educators, teachers, counselors, all together as a resource base, that is known as the banking concept of education. Then we see that how there is a connection between nation building and education. So all of you must agree with me that whenever you have started going through your basic education facilities, you must have known about the concept of constitution, preamble, nation, nation state, so on and so forth. So the first primordial foundation of understanding nation and understanding how a patriotic value system functions within yourself is through the education. Without education, even we are not in a position to recognize our patriotism or our feelings towards the nation. Education helps you in bringing that consciousness to identify whether wing you are belonging to, whether which kind of patriotic you are identifying yourself, and where do you place your value systems and where do you place your own ideas and ideologies. So from this we understand that education is the basic foundation through which we happen to understand how nation building, preamble, constitution, all of them are functioning in a very integrated manner. Next, we come to the concept of how colonialism, imperialism, and indigenism is functioning. So through education, we happen to learn that what was the situation of the then Indian society during the colonial period. Then we happen to learn what was the situation of education while the imperialism of European society was continuing. And then we happen to understand that since we are having the indigenous communities, the tribals and the Adivasis, when their things are promoted, it is known as indigenism. So education is trying as a building block or a connectivity between colonialism, imperialism, and indigenism to understand in all these issues. Then we also see that the entire curriculum and development of a pedagogical system was because of education from the post-independence, from the independence, and from all quarters of the country. Like, supposedly you want to understand how education is developing, you will definitely be finding a way in which you will find reference to the history. Independent aguru kon hetila, इंडिपेंडेंस समय कौन हेतिला, इंडिपेंडेंस परे कौन हैला, एलपीजी इंट्रोड्यूस हैला परे कौन हैला, मॉडर्निटी समय कौन हैला, पोस्ट मॉडर्निटी समय कौन हैला. आउ एंटायर सब परिस्थिति बळे curriculum or the curriculum pedagogy which was been developed, how all of these things were continuing, that was also understood. So education through its reports, through its chapters, through its resources, always help us in understanding its historical trajectory. In all of such things, another important issue which plays a role is language. Like we have been also seeing that we are discussing about what all modalities of language we should use while we are having some discussion. Similarly, what language you are going to use when you are having the text? Because diversity is the essence of our country. We have diverse background people. Some are purely from the background of Odia. Some are purely with the exposure to Hindi. Some are a kind of balance between Odia and English. So you cannot find a synonymity of all these things by which you can find a country language to be used. So that is a major thing which we see, that education tries to make us more acquainted to the language, and different exposure to different languages tries to increase our understanding of the entire situation of society. Then we also see that there is a kind of promotion of national culture through education. For example, whatever cultural functions and festivals we are trying to celebrate in Odisha, for example, Rath Yatra, or for example, any kind of worshipping, all of them are definitely going to contribute towards the national culture. Like the particular function of Onam, Lohri, and Nuakhai, all these are having similar tendencies of patterns, but they are being celebrated through different names in different parts of the country. So, this makes us understand that how national culture is also being represented through education. The last but not the least topic which I would like to discuss with all of you is regarding nation building in other countries, in South Asian countries. So education plays a very important role in countries like America, Canada, Germany, Russia, and other places where educating people helps in bringing a balance in the society and helps in understanding several dynamics of the society. Similarly, in the South Asian countries, if you take the reference of Sri Lanka, we see that education in Sri Lanka plays a very vital role to make people aware about their own Sri Lankan dynamics of society. And educating women even contributes better to the economy and understanding of dynamics of the society. Such is the similar condition at countries like Bangladesh and countries like Nepal, where we see that education has been always playing an indispensable role in finding a better concrete production or reproduction to the holistic development of society. That holistic development includes social, political, cultural, economic, moral, and almost all dimensions of development of society. So with this, I complete today's session, and I'll now open the floor to some discussions and some questions. So you can unmute your speaker and you can ask. So I will share my PPT in the group, so you need not worry about getting them, and you can ask me questions. Yes.
So thank you, ma'am. So dear learners, you put your question. If you want to ask any question, any doubt, so you can put for your question to ma'am.
You can also
Go ahead,
ask
learners.
me in the chat box. So Shailendra has asked a question: how to end cultural domination in education? So, in the sense, cultural domination of any particular group, you are meaning, or cultural domination in education? See, if I understand your question in the right sense, here we are discussing education as a promoter and carrier of culture, so that the culture has been taken forward and represented through education. But if you are saying about cultural domination, do you refer to the rich and affluent group cultural domination? Yes, okay. So, see, in the coming classes, we will be discussing that how the curriculum is to be framed. So, when we discuss about how curriculum is to be framed, definitely we are understanding that it should be framed in such a way that the cultural domination of the rich and the affluent class has to be ended. And that kind of a curriculum is a just curriculum. We will be coming to this concept of just curriculum. In that just curriculum, you don't find domination of the rich people. You don't find domination of the rich cultural people. And it is a way in which even the poorest of the poor people can relate, and poorest of the poor child can also bring a kind of revolt and question against the status quo of the rich and affluent class. So when we are saying that we are aspiring for an equal or equality oriented education, we are also aspiring that our schools and colleges should have a just curriculum in which such kind of equality oriented curricular pedagogy can be practiced. Okay. Okay, so we have, I think, Sailendra, I have clarified your doubt. Okay, thank you, he is saying. In the coming classes, while we are discussing about curriculum, we will again discuss on this. Okay, so we have got another very good question from Itishri Maharana. She is asking that what is democratization of education? So, ଯେମିତି ମୁଁ ତମମାନଙ୍କୁ ବୁଝେଇଲି ଯେ democratization of country को तमे जदि रेफरेंस पॉइंट नेकिना बुझिबाकू चाहिबो डेमोक्रेटाइजेशन ऑफ एजुकेशन ताले हमें कोन देखुचे when we are saying democracy is present, we are understanding that democracy means it is a setup in which everyone has got equal share to the resources available. So similarly, when we are saying democratization of education, we mean that it is a kind of situation in which we are getting a democratized way of accessibility to resources, so that we can access all the resources in such a manner that there should not be any kind of inequality persisting in accessing the resources within the education. Like we are saying that now the education is convenient to the rich class people, and then the poor class people are again struggling to access it. All these kind of things would not have any position then. So democratization of education will be a condition in which all the segments and classes and stratified sections of society can access education in a proper manner. Okay. For example, the midday meal scheme which we are seeing, that is also a kind of initiation from the government to find democratization in education, because until and unless they were not able to find the satisfaction of the basic survival thing of food, they were not able to access education. But with the introduction of this midday meal scheme, we are trying to see that participation of students also increased, and that helped in bringing more democracy and more participation in the education. So when we mean democratization of education, you can equally understand that comprehensive and all total participation of people in the education, regardless of the segmentations in the society, can be understood as a democratization of education. Okay, I think Itishri, I have answered your question. Okay, are you getting me, Itishri? Okay. ଆଉ କାହାର ପଚାରିବାର ଅଛି କିମ୍ବା କୌଣସି ଏକ୍ସପିରିଏନ୍ସ ଯଦି ସେୟାର କରିବାର ଅଛି କୁହ, ଯଦି ଆମ ଲେକ୍ଚରରେ ଏମିତି କିଛି ଜିନିଷ you have related to yourself, you can tell. What are the limitations of democratization of education? See, if we say any concept, there can be both limitations and opportunities to any concept. So when we are discussing about democratization of education, we are taking democratization of education as a holistic process in which we are not trying to, visualize the limitations more, because this is kind of a concept in which we are finding a space where for generations together, people those who have been oppressed, people those who have been not getting a proper justified chance, are finding chance to come in and access to the education system. So limitation for democratization of education won't be actually befitting to the society at present. Rather, we can say that it is going to help people to come out of such kind of problematic situations. Of course, I would also like to refer to you in this context regarding the whole issue of the reservation, the creamy layer of reservation, and all the issues which have followed up after the introduction of the Mandal Commission. Because when we say democratization of education, we are also referring to the strategies which are trying to help people to uplift, and strategies which are trying people to come up to the mainstream and integrate with the mainstream education system. So that can be also referred. But however, I will suggest at this present time, when we are discussing about the holistic integration of all segments of the society, limitations for the democratization of education should not be in a cup of discussion. Yes, I think I have answered to Mr. Bhuvaneshwar. So if there is any other question, you can write to me or you can ask to me. Okay, thank you, Bhuvaneshwar ji. He has told that he has got his answer. So if we have any other questions, so please do let me know or write it down in the chat box.
Anybody, any more question? Dear students, go ahead. So no question? Should we wind up the session?
I think, sir, we can wind up because they are not responding.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
so
you, ma'am.
Praveen has told thank you. Yes.
It's a nice presentation. So due to some technical problem, no doubt there is some, you have find some difficulties. Still, thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your nice presentation. So dear learners, tomorrow same time, so ma'am will take the next class. So I do feel more number of students will join. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for today.
Thank you.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Thank you very much. Thank you.